The last episode, Yanev, Amir and I were talking about these Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses and how one of the killer use cases is going to be the ability for these things to stay on, observe the scenery, and give you subtle information about who you're looking at. This is your colleague, and here's what they're interested in. Here's someone you haven't seen for a while. Here was your last interaction. We both agreed this is a just obvious and killer use case of augmented reality. Of course, it engenders all sorts of privacy concerns and all that sort of stuff. And so, Meta, through some combination of risk and battery life, are not going to go rush off and do this anytime soon. It's funny, I was actually talking to the head of AI risk at Meta the other day about this exact thing. But that's not going to stop hackers and builders to start hacking that kind of functionality into these things. And a couple of Harvard students have done exactly that. Apparently, what they're doing is they're using the live streaming capability that you can stream to Instagram, apparently, taking that feed, running computer vision over it, then trying to look up the faces and then use LLMs to aggregate all of the biographical data they can find, and then they're displaying it on your phone in near real time. So you can look at your phone and you can basically see biographical information about the person you're looking at. Now, this is both thrilling and horrifying. For me, it's thrilling. I do think it's, a very compelling use case. For people like Meta and for privacy advocates everywhere, this is like the worst case scenario. So I thought it would be very much worth talking about, both how cool these kids are and, how inventive they are, but also where does this really go and where does this all end up?
So first of all, I got to say, those glasses look good on you. You're looking good. And I'm, really impressed that they've actually managed to create this piece of technology that has that sort of power in things that really do look like regular glasses. Although I've got to say, Chris, I feel like I might be being recorded right now and it makes me very uncomfortable.
Just on that, I was hanging out with my old friend Ben Metcalf at the zoo, and he's a bit more conservative about all this stuff. And he was talking to me about something that was relatively private. And I said to him, hang on a sec. And I started filming our kids. They were playing in the zoo. And he says to me, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this sort of shit. How am I supposed to know that if I'm not being recorded? And I said, well, how about when I say to you, hang on a sec, and I press the thing with my finger and the light turns on, it means you're being recorded. Is that, do you need any more information than that can you lighten up, please? And he's like, well, I don't know. This is all very invasive.
Yeah, I mean, here's what's interesting about this stuff, actually, is that these privacy concerns, I will say they are real, but also it's a very interesting, I guess, psychological, sociological thing where that privacy has already gone, actually, in a couple of different ways. So first of all, even in developed Western democracies, we have a level of surveillance technology in our cities with CCTV and face recognition and so on. That means that that sort of thing is already happening. And then we've got the ultimate little spy tool sitting in our pockets, which is our phones, right? Okay, sure, they don't have, they have a camera, but if it's in your pocket, you can't film people without them noticing, but you sure as hell can record them. The government can sure as hell track your location very easily using GPS and the cell towers and the Wi-Fi, your location, all of this stuff, for better or worse, it's kind of that ship has sailed. And so I think the incremental privacy difference of having smart glasses is actually very, very small. But psychologically, it seems different to people. It's funny, Chris, if you go into a change room, like at a swimming pool or something, where people take their clothes off, there are always these big signs that say no cameras, right? Like a big sign on the wall saying no cameras. And it's a joke because that thing has hundreds of cameras in it, right? There's a phone in everybody's pocket, in everybody's locker. There are recording devices. So yeah, I feel like people are they're worried about a future that they're already living in with these smart glasses.
Yeah, I'm always reminded of the old story when people first saw the phone, the old telephone. There was a whole backlash of the idea of hang on, you're going to put a device in my home that other people can ring at their whim. That was perceived as a privacy violation, as a violation of one's home. And then we thought of social networks as a privacy violation, forgetting, of course, that you have to post the content in the first place. And then, of course, there was the COVID vaccine with its 5G tracking chip. Just kidding. Each of these new generations of technology, there's some subset of people who go, my God, that's a privacy violation. Now, of course, having a camera on your face, filming everybody, as you said, is the next incremental step in this journey of people having a oh shit moment. But yeah, I tend to think that there will be simple social conventions that make this fairly straightforward in fairly short order. If you're being filmed or recorded, there's the privacy light on the camera to tell you being filmed. If you're being observed, you can just have to guarantee you're being observed, and you have to curate your own social footprint or your own internet footprint. And, the idea is not to violate your privacy so much as to say, here's what this person has put out about themselves, like their business card. Here's what we've been able to retrieve from their public profile. If you think about the iPhone poster now, so if you tap two iPhones together, you can transfer a poster of each other. It's your face and your name and your phone number. This is basically just a frictionless version of that. Sure, could they be programmed to do much more invasive searches? Yes, but you can do that off a photograph. It's just a little slower. So
That's right.
I think this is ultimately going to be fine.
Fine or not, I've got very real concerns about the power of technology to surveil us, as you can already see happening in China. But my point is simply that that ship has sailed, and also that there are privacy issues all along the different things you mentioned, even with a telephone. But that privacy is really a social construct. It's not the sort of fundamental principle, and that the history of humanity, or at least for the last century, has been where there is enough utility in giving up privacy, people will gladly give it up. And I think we will just see the same thing happening here.
Well, I was involved in, the data portability and user data rights discussion back in the day. And I think there will be a cohort of people who will vehemently disagree with your statement that this is not a first principle. It's not like a basic fundamental right. I've forgotten more about this conversation than I remember, but there was, a whole bunch of people saying that privacy is not only a first principle fundamental right, but it's essential for civilization and freedom and all this other stuff. And so I think if we were to get one of those people on the show, and we should, they would have a whole litany of physiological, psychological, sociological reasons why privacy is an absolute critical good. And I don't know that I would disagree with them on many of those fronts, except to say that, these glasses are generally used in the public square. The data that one would be retrieving is generally public, and we need to rely on the rest of the privacy architecture to limit what these cameras can retrieve on the fly by default. But I think the idea that there's cameras everywhere and on people's faces, we're going to just have to live with to a degree. Okay, those are our thoughts about what these Harvard students did. What are your thoughts? Join us in the comments and tell us what you think about their little hack, about the future of this kind of person detection use case on smart glasses. And more importantly, perhaps, what do you think about privacy? Is this the end of privacy as we know it? Is this just a little incremental move in a direction that doesn't matter too much? Or is this one step closer to an Orwellian future where we are under constant surveillance? Let us know in the comments.